You know that feeling when you check your bank account at the end of the month and think, wait, where did it all go? Well, welcome to this explainer. We're going to dive straight into the hard, objective federal data to demystify a phenomenon pretty much all of us experience, why your paycheck seems to just vanish before you even have a chance to spend it. If you've ever felt like you're running on a financial treadmill, you're about to get a very clear, mathematically backed answer. We're stripping away all the guesswork today to look at the actual, documented, macroeconomic reality of our universal recurring obligations.
So if you're feeling financially squeezed right now, I want to assure you right off the bat, you are absolutely not alone. Get this, the average American household spends a staggering $6,545 every single month just on basic, non-negotiable obligations. Just think about that for a second. Before you grab a coffee, before you go to the movies, before you take a vacation or put money into a long-term investment, over 6.5 grand is already spoken for. According to federal data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, that monthly figure adds up to just over $78,500 annually. Now, what's really wild about this benchmark is what it implies. It means that regardless of your income bracket or where you live, approximately 75% of pre-tax household revenue is instantly absorbed by recurring monthly expenses. Literally, 3/4 of what you earn is essentially gone before discretionary savings even enter the chat. To figure out exactly how we get to that massive number, we're going to break this down into 5 quick parts. 1. The national monthly baseline. 2. Breaking down category costs. 3. Renting versus owning. 4. The generational spending curve. And 5. The fixed versus discretionary reality. All right, part 1, the national monthly baseline. Let's start wide and look at those universal obligations every household deals with. No matter where you live, the baseline of modern survival rests on 3 major pillars. First up, shelter and escrow, meaning rent or your mortgage, property taxes, and insurance. Second, municipal utilities. So we're talking power, natural gas, water, sewer, and sanitation. And third, modern communications. Now, we might sometimes think of high-speed internet and cellular plans as modern luxuries, but let's be real. In today's economy, they're critical infrastructure required for work, security, and just managing your everyday life. Together, these form the completely unavoidable baseline. Moving on to part 2, breaking down category costs. Let's zoom in and see exactly where that 6.5 grand is vanishing to every month. When we categorize these federal expenditure metrics, the heavy hitters become incredibly obvious. Housing and utilities take the absolute top spot, making up 33.4% of the pie. Right behind it is transportation at 17%, followed by food and groceries at 12.7%, and then insurance and healthcare at 9.8%. So the really crucial takeaway here is that just housing and transportation alone consistently combine to make up over half of your total baseline cash outflow. Before you've even eaten a single meal, paying for the roof over your head and the vehicle to get you to work has eaten up over 50% of your structural budget. Let's isolate that second category for a second to see how these costs compound. Transportation represents an average outflow of over $1,100 a month across American households. And remember, that is not just a car payment. This massive chunk of your budget is heavily driven by mandatory vehicle insurance, fuel, and all that routine preventative maintenance, or, the sudden panic of a check engine light, simply required to keep that vehicle operational. And hey, even if your mortgage is completely paid off or your rent is magically covered by someone else, you still got to keep the lights on, right? Essential utility bills apply universally. You're generally looking at $180 to $250 a month just for electricity and natural gas, depending on your climate. Add another $80 to $120 for water and waste, then factor in $120 to $200 for broadband and mobile connectivity. It literally adds hundreds of dollars in fixed monthly obligations to your life, regardless of your property tenure status. Which brings us perfectly to part 3, renting versus owning. Let's tackle this massive debate to see if buying a house actually offers an escape from creeping costs. What we find here is a fascinating concept economists call tenure neutrality. As a renter, your liabilities include rent payments, which typically absorb a good 30 to 36% of your monthly income, along with renter's insurance, utilities, and recurring parking fees. But as an owner, you're basically just trading one set of liabilities for another. You've got fixed principal and interest on the mortgage, escrowed property tax and insurance, mandatory HOA dues, and complete responsibility for full utility coverage, including things like sewer and trash that a landlord used to handle. The data proves it. Whether you're paying rent or a mortgage, there is absolutely no escaping compulsory monthly overhead. Okay, part 4, the generational spending curve. If buying a house doesn't eliminate the squeeze, does it at least get easier as we age and progress in our careers? Well, the data reveals how expenditures shift by age. For those under 25, average spending is up to $3,900, primarily focused on rent and education. As you hit your peak earning years between 35 and 54, spending balloons to over $8,000, shifting heavily toward mortgages, family utilities, and health. Finally, for those 65 and over, it drops back down, focused largely on Medicare, insurance, and housing. So the priorities definitely shift, but notice what happens to the overall burden.
Here's the real kicker. The fixed bill share stays stubbornly locked between 68 and 76% across every single life stage. We call this age continuity. Basically, society extracts roughly the same percentage of your wealth just to maintain your baseline standard of living no matter how old you are. Whether you're a young adult just starting out, a mid-career professional, or a retiree living on a fixed income, that baseline requirement persists relentlessly. Finally, part 5, fixed versus discretionary reality. We've looked at the categories, the housing types, and the age brackets. Now let's face the reality of what's actually left in your wallet. When we filter all of this macroeconomic data down, we find honestly the most jaw-dropping statistic of all. Half of standard household outlays go to fixed housing and utilities. Another 25% goes to fixed transportation and insurance. Essential food and healthcare take another 13%. When you add all of those non-negotiable living costs together, they swallow up a massive 88% of standard household outlays. This right here completely validates why you feel the way you do. Household financial stress is structural. It's not just behavioral. You aren't necessarily doing anything wrong with your budget. It's simply that an estimated 88% of your money is tied directly to recurring non-negotiable living costs. Only a tiny 12% sliver of your income is actually discretionary. That is the only money you truly have control over for savings, investments, or leisure. To wrap this all up, the federal data gives us 3 incredibly clear takeaways for your personal financial planning. First, 10-year neutrality. Both owners and renters face compulsory recurring overhead. Second, age continuity. These monthly bill obligations persist relentlessly across all life stages. And third, predictable cash flow. These fixed liabilities form the core, unavoidable baseline of absolutely every single household budget. Which leaves us with one pretty profound final thought. If almost 9/10 of your paycheck is structurally pre-spoken for by modern society just to keep you sheltered, transported, fed, and connected, the real question isn't how to magically eliminate those costs. The real question is, how will you strategically leverage that precious remaining 12% to build your future? Think about it and start planning. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.